Hi, I'm Emil Larson in London today to meet Daniel Leite, VP of Marketing at Circle Cardiovascular Imaging. I'm here to talk more about himself and his business. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. So, Daniel, can you tell me a little bit about the company history of Circle Cardiovascular?
It's an interesting story. So the company is just over a decade now, so it's pretty young by any standards. It actually started in Berlin. Not a lot of people know it, more as an educational platform, and we started to develop a very archaic software because back in the days there are some offerings there, but particularly in cardiovascular imaging there was a big gap in the market. So there were some users, actually, physicians, doctors. One of them eventually even went into to the engineering area as well, so it covers both clinical and engineering. And he started developing a platform at the time, which is a precursor to the CVI-42 that we have now. And then one of those physicians had to move to Calgary, so that's on the western seaboard of Canada. And he met some individuals that were more commercial oriented, more commercial driven, and they decided to build a company. So that company was Circle Cardiovascular Imaging. That was about 10 years ago. And then our progress has just been amazing, I would say.
Circle Cardiovascular Imaging has recently seen the product launch of the CVI-42 5.11 version. Do you see that as a disruptive technology in the space?
Certainly so, in the space that we are. We're always trying to be the state of the art. So everything that we do, we try to make the field move forward. So we are in the vanguard of that, I'd like to think. And we feel that quantitative perfusion is the next step. So obviously it's a risk, as in any business, right? So we're betting very heavily that this will be a very disruptive change into the cardiac MR market itself. But we're all in, and we believe that this is the future, and we believe that not only our users but our patients will have to benefit from doing the perfusion instead of just a visual assessments of their heart.
What do you see as the main differences between the cardiac MR and the cardiac CT in the product portfolio?
So our portfolio nowadays covers perhaps two major aspects within the cardiac MR, which actually some of the innovations that I mentioned, most of them are within the cardiac MR, so the whole 4D flow strain that I mentioned in the QP, the quantitative perfusion. On the CT front as well, there's a lot of innovation there as well. So we have solutions that are targeted towards the interventional market. So things like helping planning TAVR or replacement of the aortic valve, devices for mitral valve as well, which is also going to be extremely important in the future. We do other things as helping the measure of the closure of the appendix, the left atrial appendix, helping the physicians guide septal crossings and things of that nature. So it's very geared towards the interventionalist cardiologist slash radiologist.
So you spoke about the cultural differences within the emerging markets, the BRIC economies. I wanted to look more inside your company, and can you tell me a little bit more about the culture of Circle?
What we do is arguably highly technical, but that's advantage, and it's a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage. So I think the real advantage, and that reflected in our culture, is that we're really forced to, not forced, but we really took a decision to nurture our people, right? Because it takes a long time to educate people in how to speak to our solutions, understanding the value proposition, and being a productive member of the team. So because of that, we really want to not only retain our team, but bet on their career laddering. So if you look at any number of people within the organization that have stayed here for a number of years, including myself, you can really see a career pathway within the company. So we bet in those interests, we understand where people are strong and not as strong, and where they need to evolve, and what are their interests, and we really nurture them into that direction. So I think that is part and parcel of the culture of Circle. There's let's say we're a family sometimes. I think we're more as like brothers and sisters, right? So we fight with each other, it's fine, and we all have different opinions, but at the end of the day, we all need to come together and deliver a solution at the end. So I think that's a Circle culture for sure.
What's it like to work inside of Circle from your perspective?
So I think the passion is really important, for sure. Everybody needs to be passionate about what they do, and I think everybody that works at Circle is passionate about whatever their role is specifically, and the whole mission altogether. So we really want to deliver the best-in-class solution for our customers.
Have you noticed any particular trends in the cardiac imaging space, and what do you foresee moving into 2020?
So the challenges for me, has a lot to do with the growth and the changes of the challenges over time. So if we look at the company with 30 employees, and then we look at the company with 200, obviously the challenges are significantly different. Nowadays, obviously, is getting people that are passionate, intelligent, and they understand the business we operate in, to come in and help us build this vision that we want to build. That's definitely a challenge. And obviously, retaining these people and making sure they're producing to the best of their abilities, and they're in the position that best fits their contribution to the team. That's a very big challenge internally. Externally, the big challenge is growing the niche market where we operate. So we're the market leader today, specifically when we look at the cardiac MR products that we produce all around the world. If you look at UK, Germany, United States, if you're doing cardiac MR, typically Circle is the first, if not one of the top choices for people altogether. So that also brings great responsibility in the sense that we need to develop this market. We need to work with regulatory reimbursements and things of this nature to make sure that the market is expanding at the pace that it should. There is significant work that has been done so far. So for example, if we look at the area of cardiac MR specifically, there's recently been the FDA approval of contrast agents, gadolinium specifically, in the United States. So that's obviously a very big step towards the utilization of cardiac MR. On the CT front, there's a recent publication as well, actually from the UK, Scott Hart, that has really set up the cardiac CT to be at the forefront of how we use that technology as a gatekeeper for patients in terms of the diagnosis of cardiac CAD, coronary artery disease.
Circle are a market leader in the cardiac imaging space. Do you foresee yourselves leading the market for the next 5-10 years or whatever it may be?
It's for sure, and it wouldn't be interested if it wasn't the case, right? For now, we're still the market leader for any metrics for the technologies that I referenced, and we intend to being so. If you look at the level of skills and number of people we have working with us, not just from a commercial perspective, but the investment that we put in R&D and software development, it's quite substantial. So I would challenge anyone to kind of look at any company at our size that strictly operates on the niche area that we operate. To my knowledge, there isn't any. So we're definitely leading that part, and we will continue to do so.
With the recent launch of the 511 version of CVI 42, what's the next step? Is there more product development?
Without disclosing too much, so the 511 is actually very recent. We are actually capitalizing and announcing it on our SNA, so it's only a few weeks from now. But we have bigger plans. So like I mentioned before, this niche area is really developing into being utilized globally at a very larger scale. So our solutions need to represent this. So we're That's why we're investing a lot in the artificial intelligence area. So typically, for example, if we look at cardiac MR, that has grown an area as based on a lot of research and because it was fairly new. And obviously our solutions represented a lot of that. So there's a lot of advanced functionality, a lot of things that would still need to be done manually because there was a lot of research going on. But as this progresses into the mainstream, our solutions need to adapt. So we introduced a lot of artificial intelligence. It's already there on 511. So every single aspect of our solution has AI embedded into it. So we can bring it into the clinical realm even deeper. So our vision is that, in the future, for example, cardiac MR, that at any given place can take up to an hour to acquire and to process all of that. We really want to bring it down to a 10-minute protocol. And that's how we make it mainstream.
Do you foresee AI technologies replacing human work?
I'll answer the question on a more wider term, and obviously Circle fits into that idea as well. I think AI, particularly nowadays, can be seen a little bit as a buzzword, right? But for me, it has to be a tool. I used this metaphor before, but for example, if you look back, at least when I was growing up and we didn't have phones, and then suddenly there was a big revolution, the mobile phone, and everybody was talking about it. And nowadays, it's kind of, I was talking about mobile phone, that was a thing. And nowadays, everybody just takes it for granted and just utilizes it as a tool, right? And I think AI will be exactly the same. I think people ultimately will care about results, right? I don't care if it's AI or anything else. I just care that I have a tool, I need to do a job, perform a job at the end. I'll just click a button and I'll have my results, and then I can assess whatever I want to assess. But it doesn't really matter what's in the background. I think ultimately we are human, and we rely on human to do our job. If we can facilitate the physicians and the patients and everybody that is involved lives by using tools like this, I think we'll be better off, and we can focus and devote our energies in other things and clicking buttons and drawing circles and things of that nature.
Your route to market is obviously direct sales, partnering with OEMs, and also with AI companies. Do you foresee there being any more partnerships to create a super solution?
Absolutely. Very good point. Obviously, and I think it's been a world transition into a larger community. So everybody needs to work together in order to accomplish a result. It's not dissimilar in healthcare. So obviously we partner with companies like Siemens Healthineers and GE Healthcare for a number of years already. And we work together in developing technology that we commercialize jointly to the physicians. So AI is part of that, and is increasingly more so. Like I said before, sometimes is a little bit of a buzzword, and everybody just wants to have the little 2 letters in there because it attracts attention. But it needs to be something practical in the end. We just don't do AI for AI. We do AI for a purpose, and that purpose is to create a more streamlined workflow for our patients, for our physicians.
Thank you for joining us today, Daniel, and speaking to CM Medical. It's been great.